Last week, I found myself in a bind when my regular store was closed for renovations. My cat Felix had made a mess outside his litter box, and I needed more of my usual litter brand and urine remover. After a quick search, I found another pet store about 15 minutes away. My 6-year-old daughter was with me that day because her after-school program had been cancelled. She has the bladder of a hamster, so any trip longer than 10 minutes includes at least one bathroom break. We arrived at this unfamiliar pet store, and right away, I could tell it wouldn't be my new go-to place. The aisles were cramped, the lighting was dim, and they seemed to sell more exotic fish than everyday pet supplies. Still, I needed something until my regular store reopened. After searching the cat section, I saw they didn't have my usual brand of litter or the gallon-sized urine remover I typically buy. I grabbed a substitute litter and a smaller bottle of urine remover. Not ideal, but it would work for now. As we got to the register, my daughter started doing her little I need to pee dance. I asked the clerk if they had a public restroom my daughter could use. The clerk told me in a cold tone that while they did have a restroom, it was for employees only. She didn't even look at my daughter, who was crossing her legs and bouncing up and down. The clerk then listed some nearby places with public restrooms, saying there was a Jack in the Box across the street or a gas station about 2 blocks down. I thanked her and said we would hurry. I paid for my items, took them to the car, and then walked my daughter across the street to Jack in the Box. When we got there, I faced another problem. The cashier at Jack in the Box told me that their restrooms were for customers only and I needed to buy something to use them. I was annoyed. My daughter was about to have an accident and I'd already spent money at a store that wasn't helpful. Still, I bought the cheapest thing on the menu, a small soda, just to use the bathroom. After my daughter used the restroom, we went back to my car in the pet store parking lot. As we got closer, I noticed a different employee sweeping the sidewalk. She watched us coming from Jack in the Box and called out to us. She said their parking was for customers only and that we couldn't leave our car there while going to other businesses. This was too much. I'd just spent money in their store, was denied a bathroom, and now was being told off about their parking space. My patience was gone. I helped my daughter into the car, then grabbed my newly bought substitute litter and urine remover from the back seat. The employee was still standing there, broom in hand. I told her I was so sorry and wouldn't do it again. Then I walked past her and back into the store. The same clerk who had denied us bathroom access looked confused when I came to the counter again. The clerk asked if I had forgotten something. I told her I needed to return the items I had just bought. The employee from outside had followed me in, and her face showed complete shock. The clerk started processing my return without question, but then a woman in a more formal outfit hurried over. The manager asked if there was a problem with the products. I told her the products were fine, but since her staff had said parking was for customers only and I was no longer shopping there, I shouldn't leave my car in their lot. The manager tried to fix things, saying there must be some mix-up and of course I could park there since I had just been in the store. I explained that we had to go to Jack in the Box because their restroom policy forced my young daughter to go elsewhere, and then we were told we couldn't park here while doing that. So I was just following their rules. The outside employee was staring at the floor. The manager looked embarrassed and said, "Sorry," explaining that they usually let children use the bathroom. I told her it was no problem, that I understood, and said sorry for bothering them with my business. I took my refund, walked out, and drove to the Petco about 10 minutes further away. They had my regular litter brand, a gallon of urine remover, and a public restroom that anyone could use. When I got home and checked my receipt from the first store, I saw their substitute litter cost more than my regular brand at Petco. 3 years ago, I moved into a 4-bedroom house on a quiet street. It was close to work, had a fenced yard, and even a pool. I lived with 3 other people. We got along fine. We weren't close friends, but we respected each other. No loud music, no surprise guests, no drama. I finally had a peaceful routine. Work, dinner, sleep. It stayed that way for 2 years. When our lease was almost up, I found out the other 3 were leaving. 2 were moving in with their boyfriends, and 1 got a job in another state. I didn't want to move. I liked the place and had made it feel like home. I asked the landlord if I could stay if I found new roommates. He said yes and offered me the master bedroom with a private bathroom and walk-in closet. That sealed it for me. I reached out to an old friend. We weren't super close anymore, but she and her co-worker were looking for a place. I told them I didn't want to live in a party house and couldn't handle noise because of work. My friend said they weren't party people. Her co-worker also said she worked full-time and just wanted a quiet home. We agreed, found a third roommate through Craigslist, a quiet, respectful guy, and signed the lease. I moved into the master bedroom and everything seemed fine. For 2 weeks. Then the parties started. At first it was once a week, then twice, then 4 or 5 times a week. These weren't small gatherings. Loud music, drunk people yelling, jumping in the pool in the middle of the night. I had to get up at 5 a.m. every day and I was barely sleeping. I asked them to keep it down. My friend brushed me off and said it wasn't loud, that I was just sensitive. I told them people kept blocking my car. Her co-worker told me to text someone next time or park somewhere else. I also mentioned my food kept disappearing. The co-worker said to label it. Things got worse. One day I came home and found a paper taped to my door. Just one word on it. The C word. In big bold letters. That's when I realized she wanted me out. The Craigslist roommate and I started talking more. He worked from home and was dealing with the same nonsense. People in his workspace, messing with his stuff, eating his snacks. He told me he was planning to move out as soon as his girlfriend's lease ended. I said I was done too, and we started planning. I told the landlord I was moving out. He agreed to take me off the lease. I checked with him about the furniture in the house, the couch, TV, dining table, kitchen supplies. He told me it all belonged to me. It had been left behind by the original roommates. I also canceled the internet and cable since they were in my name. Then I had an idea. I posted online free furniture. Everything must go. Within half an hour, someone messaged me. He had a moving truck and a couple of friends and asked if he could come that day. I said yes. That afternoon, they cleared the house. The couch, chairs, big TV, dining table, rugs, lamps, microwave, toaster, shower curtain, everything that wasn't theirs. I left their rooms alone. The rest of the house was bare. Right as we were finishing up, Karen walked in. She looked around, confused, then stared at me. She asked what I had done, called me a witch, then stormed into her room and slammed the door. I could hear her crying on the phone, saying I had taken everything, even the forks. I didn't say anything. I picked up my last bag, nodded at the Craigslist roommate, and left. The landlord told me later that they moved out a few weeks after. The house stayed empty for a while. Hard to throw parties with no furniture. The Craigslist roommate and I still talk now and then. He's living with his girlfriend. I found a small, quiet place of my own. No parties, no drama, just peace. This all happened back in 2013 in our quiet little cul-de-sac neighborhood. We had this neighbor, I'll call her Useless, because that's exactly what she was to society. Useless was a foster parent, but not the kind who actually cares about children. She was in it purely for the money. She had managed to get her place licensed as a group home and had about 8 kids living with her at any given time. Think of the movie Shazam, but with kids who acted terribly because they had no guidance or structure. I was just a kid back then, but even I could see how wrong everything was. Useless made those foster kids do all her chores and basically everything else around the house. She didn't even have a job outside of caring for these kids, if you could call it that. Things really started going downhill in 2013 when she stopped supervising the kids altogether. They were allowed to do whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted. One day, all of us neighborhood kids were out playing in the cul-de-sac. Some were riding bikes, others were playing kickball, just normal kid stuff. That's when it happened. One of Useless's foster kids, I'll call her Reckless, was driving Useless's car down our street at about 60 miles per hour in a residential cul-de-sac where children were playing. Everyone scattered, trying to get out of the way. My best friend's little sister was on her bike, still learning how to ride, and couldn't move quickly enough. Thankfully, her dad, I'll call him George, saw what was happening and rushed over, scooping up both his daughter and her bike just in time. That's when Useless came walking down the street screaming about how we had endangered her money. And no, she wasn't talking about her car, she was talking about Reckless, the foster kid who'd been driving. Not concerned about the kids who almost got hit, not worried about Reckless driving illegally, just worried about her paycheck. George yelled at Useless, asking what was wrong with her. He was furious that one of her foster kids was driving her car at such a dangerous speed where children were playing. Useless just complained about how we almost made Reckless crash and mentioned all the paperwork she'd have to fill out. George couldn't believe she was more worried about paperwork than children's lives. He shouted that these were children, not cash cows, and said she was running some kind of pyramid scheme instead of properly caring for the kids. George went ballistic on her, cursing her out about how she was treating those kids. I didn't understand all the adult stuff at the time, but I knew George was furious. Useless eventually went back up the street, probably realizing that George was close to losing it on her. But that wasn't the end of Useless's reign of terror. Attack number 2 came when she abused one of the kids and put them in the trunk of her car. This happened at around 3 a.m., and somehow 5 different neighbors filmed it from their windows. No one called the police right away because the kid managed to fight back and get out of the trunk. Useless lost her mind, screaming and hitting her car hood so hard the alarm went off. She woke up the entire neighborhood with her tantrum. That's when George started planning his revenge. He began collecting footage and statements from neighbors about the reckless driving incident and the trunk abuse. But while he was gathering evidence, Useless did something that crossed yet another line. She let her cat out in the front yard, even though they had a gate. Who lets a cat out unsupervised in a neighborhood? But it wasn't just that. There was a family of rabbits that had been living in our community for about 15 years. Multiple generations of these rabbits had been cared for by everyone in the neighborhood. The cats started attacking these rabbits. We managed to save 2 and kept them inside overnight, putting them back in their burrow the next day. But then we saw Useless carrying her cat directly to the rabbit's hole, laughing as she walked away. What kind of person deliberately has their cat killed defenseless rabbits that the whole community cares about? The cat killed the last 2 rabbits we had managed to save. A few days later, Useless was boarding up her windows because they'd been broken during some wild parties. While they were in the middle of this, 3 police cars pulled up to her house. When Useless came outside, she was immediately handcuffed. The officer told Useless that she was being arrested for possession of an illegal substance, child abuse, and child endangerment. Then they read her rights to her as she stood there in shock. All the neighbors walked over to George's house while the kids were being loaded into a police van. It turned out that George had been gathering evidence on everything she had done. He had followed her car when she went to buy illegal substances and filmed it. He had sent everything to the police, who had been investigating her for years but lacked solid evidence until George provided it. All the kids, including the foster children, ended up in good homes. I've heard they're all in college now, doing well. Useless has been in jail since then. I don't know how long her sentence is, but honestly, I hope she stays there for a long time. The house they lived in was eventually sold to a nice couple, but everyone felt bad for them because what was once a beautiful home had become a complete fixer-upper thanks to Useless and her lack of care. Don't mess with George. That's all I can say. This happened over 5 years ago, and even now I still feel proud of how everything turned out to be. At the time I was working at a small local bar. It wasn't a dream job or anything, but it paid the bills while I tried to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. I had just left school, didn't have a solid plan, and needed some sort of stability. The bar gave me that. It also gave me someone I didn't expect to meet, my boyfriend. He wasn't like the other guys who came around. He was quiet, respectful, and didn't try to impress anyone. We got to know each other naturally. Eventually we started dating, and that's when I learned what he was going through. He was in the middle of a rough custody battle with his ex over their toddler. It was bad. His ex was throwing out all kinds of wild accusations and trying to take full custody. Through it all, he stayed calm. He went to court, stayed clean, worked long hours, and always showed up for his child. Watching him made me respect him even more. He was doing everything he could just to be a good father. One day, he brought me around to meet his co-workers. Among them was a woman who had been friends with both him and his ex for years. They all used to work together, and even though the custody situation was tense, things seemed okay on the surface. She was always friendly and acted like she didn't take sides. But that didn't last. One evening, my boyfriend came home looking completely worn out. He dropped a thick stack of papers on the table, documents from the court, and sat down without saying much. I asked what happened, and he told me that the affidavits for the case had come in and I should read what she wrote. I picked up the documents thinking maybe it wasn't that bad, but it was bad. Her affidavit was filled with nothing but lies. She claimed that she had seen him drunk when picking up his child, that he let the toddler wander around unsupervised, and that he yelled at the kid in public. None of that was true. Not even a little bit. I was furious. I asked him how she could write something like that, and he just looked tired and said he really thought they were friends. I couldn't believe someone could be so two-faced. Then something came back to me. There was a couple at work who had a big issue with her. A few months earlier, they had sold her a car. She agreed to pay in installments, but after 3 months, they hadn't seen a single payment. They wanted to take the car back but couldn't find her current address. At the time, I had ignored the drama, but now it felt like an opportunity. After my shift, I decided to call that couple. I let them know I had information they might be interested in. When they asked what it was about, I reminded them about the car and told them I knew where she lived. They were quiet for a second, and then one of them said she still owed them 3 months of payments. I gave them her address. A few days later, she called me. She was frantic, saying her car was gone. She wasn't sure if it had been towed or stolen, but was convinced someone had taken it. She started accusing people, including my boyfriend and me. I told her it probably wasn't him since he had been busy with work and court. She asked who else it could have been, but I played dumb and said it was strange. She started complaining that she couldn't get to work now. Her job was an hour away, and she didn't have anyone to drive her. I told her that was unfortunate and she'd have to figure something out. She got frustrated and hung up. My boyfriend was sitting next to me the whole time, barely able to hold in his laughter. When I looked over at him, he was smirking, clearly amused by the whole thing. I told him exactly what I'd done, and we both burst out laughing. Over the next few weeks, everything started falling apart for her. Without a car, she couldn't make it to work regularly. She started missing shifts. Eventually, our manager had to let her go. She tried to make it sound like she was the victim, but no one really bought it. The custody case went in my boyfriend's favor. Her affidavit didn't hold up. Other co-workers came forward and said he had never once come to work drunk, let alone with his kid. They said he was always calm, clean, and good with his child. The judge gave him shared custody, and just like that, he got to stay in his kid's life. She disappeared after that. She quit social media, blocked a bunch of people, and didn't come around anymore. Honestly, I don't really care. She wanted to play dirty, and she got what was coming to her. I don't feel bad, not even a little.